Is there another floor presentation?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, House Resolution number 207, honoring Colonel John Bates, Colonel Gene Castagnetti, Captain Gerald Coffey, Captain James Hickerson, and Lieutenant General Henry Stackpole III, retired veterans who continue to give back to Hawaii. This resolution is offered by Representative McDermott.
Representative McDermott.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the adoption of this resolution.
Thank you very much. Representative Takai.
Second the motion, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. It has been moved and seconded that the resolution be adopted. Any discussion? Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What a wonderful day today. We get to honor the greatest generation and the sons of the greatest generation. Mr. Speaker, nearly 40 years ago, well, it was 40 years ago last month, the Vietnam POWs were repatriated to America. And 40 years ago this month, all combat troops came out of Vietnam. Mr. Speaker, today we have an opportunity to thank some unsung heroes who continue to give back in our community. I could go on all day about each of these individuals, but their bios are on your desk. But I would like to say a few words about each of them and their remarkable service. These are treasures in our midst, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask Colonel John Bates to please stand. Colonel Bates dropped out of, well, didn't drop out of college, left college, enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. Sorry, John. Enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. Was wounded 3 times in Vietnam, lost part of his right lung, most of his right lung. He was put on a helicopter, sent back to the hospital to get well. After several weeks there, they were going to send him home, back to stateside. Well, that didn't sit well with then PFC Bates, so he found a pair of cami trousers, a pair of boots, couldn't find a cami blouse, tucked the blouse, the hospital pink blouse, in his trousers, got on a helicopter, went back to his unit. They said, Bates, what are you doing here? He says, I couldn't leave my brothers, still coughing up blood. He was eventually medically discharged, got his college degree, and spent 5 years trying to get back into the Marine Corps, into the OCS program. 5 years. They finally relented, which is a whole story in itself. He went on to serve 30 years and retired as a Marine Corps colonel. Colonel John Bates is as hard as nails. He's hard. One word to describe Colonel Bates is Marine. Now today, Colonel Bates spends his time helping wounded warriors, triple amputees, double amputees, by skydiving, taking them out. As a triple Purple Heart winner, he understands what it is to be wounded, and he works with these young men and women. Ladies and gentlemen, please acknowledge John Bates. Colonel Gene Castagnetti, United States Marine Corps, retired. Most of you know Gene from his work up at the Punch Bowl Memorial. That work that he does, the care, the tact, the skill, the aplomb, it comes from his dedication and his love for our men and women in uniform. A love that was formed in the crucible of Vietnam, where he was a company commander, an advisor to the South Vietnamese, an advisor to the, it better be the South. He was an advisor. He saw his brothers in arms die. He was knee-deep in combat, awarded the Silver Star. Mr. Speaker, he spent 28 years in the Marine Corps. He retired and now takes care of Punch Bowl. And anyone who's been there, from presidents to prime ministers, see that he continues to give back. And it's a love for his men and women in uniform. And still to this day, he continues to give, and a highly decorated Marine. Thank you, Colonel Castagnetti. Mr. Speaker, we can't have all Marines today, so we have a couple flyboys. Captain Jerry Coffey. Jerry, please stand. You all know Jerry Coffey. Jerry is, he was, what some of you may not know is when President Kennedy was making the decisions on the Cuban Missile Crisis, he was relying on the photos taken by a young pilot going treetop level with his hair on fire, with the camera lens open, to give him those pictures. That pilot was Jerry Coffey. Jerry did such a good job, they rewarded him with a combat tour in Vietnam. Now, Jerry spent some time in the jungle, just like John Bates and Colonel Castagnetti, But Jerry didn't hike in. He parachuted in. He was shot down. And Jerry spent 7 years as a POW. 7 years, Mr. Speaker. And while there, he said, how can I use this? How can I take these lemons and make lemonade out of them? Jerry then retired after 28 years, finished his naval career, and began a public speaking ministry, if you will, talking to anybody and everyone about faith and how to overcome obstacles. And he became a motivational speaker in demand by some of the largest corporations. Speaks every year at the Naval Academy to young plebes, to young naval future officers, to tell them about this experience. 7 years. Still volunteers, many community boards. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Jerry Coffey. Captain Jim Hickerson, our other flyboy. I call these flyboys, they're not that young anymore. Jim Hickerson spent 5.5 years as a Vietnam POW. Jim Hickerson's personal characteristics, he is radically humble. You wouldn't know if you were sitting next to Jim if he was ever in a POW camp. Won't talk about it. You have to pry it out of Jim. Not because he's reluctant to share this, but it's just that he doesn't talk about it. When you talk about Jim Hickerson, and he is involved in a multitude of charities, including his church and boards and commissions, and he was awarded a Distinguished Public Service Medal by the Navy, you have to mention his wife, Carol. I don't have time to go into the story, Mr. Speaker, but theirs is a love story, a romance that a Hollywood scriptwriter would reject because it's too unbelievable, too unfathomable, and it's all tied up into the Vietnam experience. Jim Hickerson is a giver. He helps those. He doesn't look for friends. He looks to be a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Jim Hickerson. Mr. Speaker, we did this alphabetical order today, but it's fitting that our next honoree is the last one. Lieutenant General Stackpole. General, please stand. That's the only time in my life I've ever given a general an order. And General Stackpole is the epitome of a Marine Corps general, a courtly gentleman who has never uttered profanity. He doesn't curse, never has. He's the only Marine I've ever met that doesn't curse. But he doesn't use profanity. Yet he is a life taker and a heartbreaker, Mr. Speaker. He was knee-deep in the stuff during Vietnam. In fact, he was so badly injured, Mr. Speaker, we almost lost him if it wasn't for the great work of our young Navy corpsmen. Mr. Speaker, he was put on the pile, the morgue pile, the pile of the deceased Marines. That's how badly he was injured, till a chaplain came by and said, hey, wait a minute. This guy's still alive. And they called over the corpsman. The corpsman said, no, he's gone, chaplain. No, he's still alive. They saved him. They saved him. His leg was so badly injured, they thought they were going to amputate it. They were able to save it. About 18 months of rehabilitation, perhaps more. They were going to discharge him. He fought to stay in the Marine Corps and went on to a distinguished, brilliant career. Mr. Speaker, being a Marine officer is a pretty rare thing. Being a 3-star Marine Corps general is very, very rare. And we are honored to have him here today. General Stackpole also ran the Pacific Asian Center, I believe, at Fort Shafter for several years. I forget the proper name of that. But he is just renowned, and the Marine generals who come through still seek his advice and counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General Hank Stackpole. Now, I didn't miss anybody, did I? Okay, I got you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Takai.
Thank you. I rise in support of this measure.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Unlike the war hero status that was showered on the veterans of World War II, the veterans of the Vietnam War were showered with insults and ill treatment. Protesters carrying signs with anti-war slogans confronted many returning Vietnam War vets. There were no ticker tape parades. There were no grand celebrations. What troubles me, and I'm sure it troubles you as well, is not that America lost the war, but we also lost our spirit. We should have been proud of them. Hero status should have been bestowed on each one of them. More than 536,000 U.S. service members fought this war. There were 303,644 wounded, and 58,220 died. The men before us represent the 34,374 Vietnam veterans living in Hawaii today. Two of them, Jerry Coffey and Jim Hickerson, saw the war from the lenses of POWs. And despite all that we as a nation didn't do for them, they dedicated their lives to the betterment of our world, nation, and state. They have served us well. They are leaders dedicated to improving our state and our communities, and they continue to work closely with all our veterans and their families. March 14, 2013 marked the 40th anniversary of the release of the Vietnam prisoners of war. It is especially fitting that we honor our Vietnam veterans amongst the veterans of World War II. I'd also like to recognize, and if he could stand, one of our colleagues, Representative Gene Ward, who is also a Vietnam veteran. And can we give him a round of applause, Gene? We honor you, we honor all of you. We honor your fellow Vietnam veterans who today receive this from a grateful state, a long, much overdue thank you. We thank you for fighting for our nation. We thank you for never giving up on us. Now, may I ask if there's any other Vietnam veterans, if they could rise? And let's give them a round of applause. Please stand. Please remain standing. Ken, Jean, please remain standing. And can our honorees stand? And colleagues, can we join all of these heroes amongst us for a warm round of applause? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Ward.
Speaker, I rise in support of these 5 superheroes and with gratitude to my colleague who basically blessed my socks off after Vietnam and the reception that we received then. I never expected something like this. But Speaker, I have to mention that these gentlemen have been role models, they've been mentors, not only to me, but particularly to my family. I want to mention my daughter, Johanna Maping Ward, who sometimes doesn't like to do things. But when she met through Orson Swindle, these gentlemen who are the POWs sitting in front of us, she learned that when they were tortured, the only way they could get through it was just to do it, get on with it, as they came to their hooches, or the Hanoi Hilton, as it's been known. So when my daughter doesn't like to do something, she says, because she's met them and has known them, she says, Daddy, I'm just going to POW it. So whenever she doesn't want to do something, she just says, Daddy, I'm going to POW it. In fact, I got to say the same thing. There's a lot of things I don't like to do. But what you guys have done, you've shown us and you've modeled, and you're here, and you're survivors, and you're a blessing. And to be on the floor with the 442nd and you 5 here today is really a historic day for the state of Hawaii. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all for your service to the people of this nation and the state of Hawaii. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Members, any further discussion on the resolution before us? Representative Bellotti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support.
In support, please
And just
proceed.
Just very brief. As a good and dutiful daughter-in-law to a retired Marine, I'm compelled to stand up and simply say, hoorah.
Members, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor of the resolution passing signify by saying aye. Thank you. The motion is carried. Representative McDermott, please proceed with the presentation of the congratulatory certificates and lays.